Hey everyone, sorry I haven't made a new video anytime soon. Mostly I've been, it's not that I have been waiting for inspiration because I've had a few ideas of things that I've wanted to make, but just like zero motivation. It's winter or it's getting to be winter, so I knew my depression cycle would start up at some point soon, and it definitely hit me. So I was kind of waiting to get a little bit more motivation and enthusiasm, restarted some antidepressants, and I'm starting to feel a little bit better and have a lot more energy again, thankfully. So now I really wanted to make a video on this topic ever since it just kind of came to me when I was talking to a photographer about why I don't try to make classes on how to teach models. I think I have a lot of reasons on why I haven't really put together a class on teaching models. Partially, I just haven't had a lot of time. I wouldn't mind it necessarily, but I just haven't had a lot of time. And then I'll always kind of remember, and maybe this is just a stigma that you guys can correct me on, but from my own experience and what I've seen, I think it is like let's say 8 out of 10 times true that a lot of modeling courses and classes are completely scammy. Like they're just there for your money, but they're not really going to teach you anything. A lot of people think that what they need to learn is posing or like how to do your makeup better, and there are definitely things like that. Like you do want to know a little bit of like how to make a portfolio and how to present yourself, and how to maybe like if you're not quite as like familiar or comfortable with posing, then you might want to learn a little bit more about posing or how to flow or how to work with photographers better with posing. Maybe skip a few steps and learn exactly like what your good angles are or lighting. I can totally see that for sure. A lot of these classes I would say aren't necessarily teaching that. I don't even know how many models would be good at teaching something like that, because so much of it becomes more of like a muscle memory and instinctual thing that I don't know how you would teach someone to do that for themselves. A lot of it is a lot of practice. I think it could be broken down and I think it could be done, but I think it would be very hard for a majority of models to try to teach a class like that. Plus, you can be the best poser you want to be, and you could be a beautiful, gorgeous woman, or you could just like be so amazing at modeling, never take a bad photo, and it doesn't really matter because that's not how you get into modeling. Like, that helps a lot. Don't get me wrong. I think that that's pretty important and it'll get you far, but it won't get you a career in modeling. And this is the part where I think a lot of models don't feel like bothering teaching other people how to get into modeling or turn it into a profession, because they don't want to know and they don't want to do the work. We definitely don't post all the tips and tricks online or somewhere easily accessible, because like what works for one person doesn't always work for another person. We all kind of understand this, that we can give each other tips, but to always take it with a grain of salt. There's lots of like guidelines. I would never want to be responsible for telling someone like how they can get into modeling and it not working for them. But of course, like that's not the main reason. It's easy enough to tell people or help people and guide people. And I think it would definitely take more than maybe just a class, but something where you're like really working together on how to get to the point. But the main reason, and sorry, I keep like circling back and not saying it, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, is that most of the time they don't want to do the work. Like, and I get that part of it is they don't know what kind of work it takes to make modeling a job. That like who would? Like when I think about myself, sometimes anyway, when I think about myself, I definitely didn't know what this career was going to be like when I got into it, and I really don't even know how I got into it half of the time. Like, I kind of fell into it. Like, modeling was definitely something, it was like a hobby that I had that I was gung ho about. Like, I was in love with this, I was passionate about it, I did it in all of my free time. And like, I have an obsessive personality, so I like obsessed over this. How can I get better? What hair color do I need? What do I need to like attract more photographers? These are all things that I thought. And I think like that benefited me a whole lot. It was pretty important for helping me being able to reach a bigger clientele, or being able to reach a very like stable, secure clientele of people who would want to work with me. I didn't have a good idea of who I wanted to work with or what kind of art I wanted to do. I just liked doing it. So being like very wide was very helpful. Wasn't particularly like I wasn't particularly adamant on like the quality of work, mostly because I didn't have an eye for it just yet, but also I didn't expect for that to really ever matter. Like, there were certainly photos that I was like, yeah, this is so much better and this is great and I really like it and I think like this person's a really good artist. Um but working with like super great experienced artists and working with like less experienced artists, either way I was getting to model, so I was like pretty happy, if that makes sense. And I was getting to try out new things and different ideas, and sometimes it would mean like working with someone who maybe isn't the most amazing artist, but I really loved the concept and I thought it was fun. And that's kind of how I got into modeling and got started myself. Slowly, I just kind of needed more money to do it. I wanted to meet new people, I wanted to like work with more people. I was still kind of finding myself in what I was doing. I was trying a bunch of genres. A lot of people I talk to who want to get into modeling are like, how do I only work with good people? How do I only work with great concepts? And like, if it was like that, it wouldn't be a job. I mean, you could try to only work on concepts that you like, and I'm sure that that's I'm not sure, but anything's possible in the realm of possibility. So it's might be possible, but I think for the most part, you're going to be working with people and their concepts and their art and their job, or what they want. And that's what part of the job is. Every once in a while, someone wants me to help them develop a concept. And even still, I would say these are rarely my own concepts. It wasn't until I got into self-portraits that I ever really even thought about kind of coming up with my own concepts. Sometimes I would just come up with an idea and like compromise with people on like what we were going to work with, but it was very much one of those, I guess you could say a collaboration, because it is so much of everyone's idea versus just working on something the way that I see it and the way that I vision it and visualize it. Like, I've really learned that I kind of have to do that all by myself. It takes a lot of work to have a lot of that creative control, but it doesn't mean that I don't like working with other people on their art and their ideas, even if it's not necessarily something that I feel like is my art. And explaining this concept to people can be difficult. Some people don't care, and then those ones might have a better chance of being able to make this a career. So that's like one like reason that it can be really hard to get into modeling that I hear a lot is like, people want to know how can they do this and make it a job, but only the things that they want to do. And that's just not gonna happen. Like, I would just suggest keeping it a hobby so that way you can pick and choose what you're interested in and what you want to do, and you'll be a lot happier that way. Another one that I definitely wouldn't have foreseen, even though I feel like I really should have, when I started modeling, was how many maybe like unflattering images you'll get of yourself. So modeling is not a confidence booster. Modeling is not like a way to feel pretty or good about yourself. Sometimes I feel pretty and good about myself like a normal person, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm able to see all of my flaws, and sometimes like that can really bother me, but at the same time I know that this is a job, so it doesn't matter how I feel about how I look. I still have to show up. And even if I don't feel great about how I look, like I have to put those feelings and those opinions on the back burner because they're not as important as like the project and the job. And my body might fluctuate a little bit day to day because that's what a human body does, but it probably hasn't changed so dramatically that the person who's booking me like thinks I'm not going to look anything like my portfolio. Like they probably have a pretty good idea of what I look like based on everything that they've already seen. And I've heard of people who cancel photo shoots because they just aren't looking their best that day and they don't feel like they want to go out when they're bloated or tired or something. And if that works for you as a model, that's great, but you can get a reputation for being super flaky and not reliable, which can be a really big deal. And, like, for instance, I'm on the road most of the time of the year. If I can't make it to a shoot, it's a little hard to reschedule something just because I'm not feeling great on that day. Plus, I'm really having to like consider the other person, usually the photographer or other artists, like schedule when they're the ones who plan this, that it might not be very easy for them to just reschedule something like that. So modeling is very much about putting my ego aside and how I feel about myself or how I like myself or how I wish I could be seen, and kind of going out there and doing the job and feeling confident anyway. Which I guess is a kind of confidence. I definitely still feel confident in myself. It's just that I don't always feel super confident in my own appearance, and I definitely don't use modeling to feel confident in my appearance because like a good portion of those photos aren't going to feel flattering at all. They just aren't. Like people will see you in different ways and how they like you or how they want you in the image. And like I said, I'm kind of okay with that. That's part of the job and that's part of what it is. I don't need the photos from modeling to like help me feel good about my appearance. Okay, so I think the next thing is you're gonna live a pretty unstable life. Like there's certain areas that you can live in, certain cities where you're not gonna have to be traveling all of the time to get jobs or to keep up work, but usually you're gonna suffer from something they call the local model curse. This isn't everywhere, but it does totally happen where if you live in a certain city, there's a good chance people aren't going to hire you in the city that you live in because you seem always available. And so they're always going to wait and they're always going to end up trying to work with someone who's traveling through, someone who's very different. Maybe they're waiting until you finally given in and decided to like shoot with them for free or for trade. Just in general, they're usually waiting for that one day that they're going to actually hire you, and rarely do they ever end up doing that. So most of the time you will be spending outside of the city that you live in. So you don't see home very often. Some people find a way to like make it work and they travel on weekends. But what I'm saying is there's going to be a lot of traveling. Unless you're living in like San Francisco or New York City, where you might be able to work with a lot of people who are coming in and traveling to you. Or there's just such an abundance of people that there's a chance of like you still having someone who wants to work with you. I'm home maybe collectively 3 months of every year, and so I'm not home for about 9 months of every year. So that can be hard to maintain like certain kinds of friendships, relationships, etc., etc. It's hard work. Plus, to keep expenses down, I'm often living out of a car or a suitcase. People do it different ways. I generally prefer a car because I feel like I can carry more, have more of my stuff, and at least like kind of be living in my own like portable home. People like to suggest an RV. You really don't want to go with an RV unless you like just enjoy RV or van living. It's hard to get to certain places in an RV. They're expensive. It's hard to maintain and upkeep. It's hard to find places to park it, especially if you're going into a city where you need to work. You're going to have a really hard time with an RV. So I generally use my car. It's pretty nice. I love my Honda Fit. If I need to sleep in it, it's possible. Otherwise, I'm looking for like cheap Airbnbs. I can have a lot more that I can travel with in my car. And then if I have someone who like hosts me, cancels, then I always have my car as a backup to carry me or travel me around. Some people fly, which I can understand the benefit of that a lot. Being on the road, I do not like driving. It makes me really anxious and nervous. Um, and it's nice to kind of just get to the city that you want to go to that's going to bring you the most work. But you will be limited as far as like your suitcases. You can get a rental car in order to travel around, but that will be like another huge expense. Um, if you don't get a rental car, then you're kind of relying on other people for jobs, which to me just seems a little insecure unless you're in a city that makes it very easy to use public transportation. If you're in the US, that's not very easy at all. Most people don't live near public transportation at all. Um, and I think like the ultimate reason most people don't really end up getting into this job after like everything is just that it's a lot of work. Like I would say maybe 10% of the time I'm in front of the camera and really loving it and enjoying it and just getting to do the modeling thing. But a large portion of what I'm actually doing is computer. Like it's a computer job. Modeling is very much a desk computer job and then a driving job. I like had my phone track me for how long I spent on my phone versus how long I spent in a car. And like on an average week, I'm on my phone about 8 hours, which seems very low. But I use my laptop more often for doing work. I just like the big screen. Some people are more phone people, but on my phone alone, it was 8 hours. And then I spent about 16 hours that week driving. That's like a part-time job. Well, kind of, it's a little less, but still, that's a lot of hours to spend in a car. And then, like, I would say probably a good portion of my time is just spent answering emails, posting statuses, and cold calling, cold calling, cold calling, cold calling, cold calling, cold calling, cold calling. People ask me if there's a better way to do it, and there's just not. Like, getting rejected a ton of the time is just a part of this job. And if you want to get more work, you just keep cold calling. Maybe you tweak your answer or your messages, and maybe that'll help you get more people interested. But like modeling, there's still occasionally where people reach out to me, but I would say a lot more often than not. Photographers are expecting models to reach out to them to let them know when they're coming to a city and have availability. I have no idea why it changed. Maybe it has something to do with the algorithm. It's annoying, but that's pretty much a good portion of it is kind of being like a telemarketer, I would say. It doesn't feel great, but that's kind of what the job is. And so a lot of times after me or another model give a lot of models like this help and advice, most models kind of putter out. Like it's a hard job. So I definitely see a lot of like big time models burning out from time to time, taking years or months off and then coming back into it. I see a lot of people who just start this and then realize like what it's like or can't figure out how to make it work or just don't want to like do the work to make it work. And it's a lot of self-motivating work. Like there's not someone there to pay you for that like 20 hours a week that you spent answering emails. You just have to do it and hope that you're going to make that money back on your next tour. Um, there's not someone holding you responsible. So a lot of it is guessing work. A lot of it is researching. A lot of it is looking at blogs and looking at what other people are doing and tweaking your own business methods. A lot of it is doing your own accounting and figuring out your own retirement, and very much is like owning a small business. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's going to be a lot easier than it looks. And so they don't last. And a lot of models Like, it's hard to spend a lot of energy on someone that you believe in or someone that you like, or just trying to be kind and finding that these people don't actually want to do it. And I think it just kind of becomes a little disheartening. Or rather, you spend a lot of hours and time on someone, and it kind of, I don't know, I think it can be a little sad. I mean, yeah. Other than that, I guess like I've also had, and I think a lot of models have had this, where we all have like a few icky stories where we're trying to help a model and then they take advantage of us. I wouldn't say that this is like the main reason or anything that I like am not always the most forthcoming with helping models or new people get into modeling or answering a bunch of questions on how to get into modeling. I would say it's usually the first stuff. I haven't before past like helped people and then they just seem so disappointed in the answer that like I don't know, it became harder and harder to just want to tell people exactly how it is. I'm not trying to make it sound horrible. Like, I still like it. I'm just trying to tell you it is also a job. Like, it also comes with a lot of hard work. And I will say, like, I feel really fulfilled and super successful doing this job. Like, all of it. All of the, like, horrible parts that I absolutely hate. Like, I mean, some of it is grueling because it's customer service, and I don't know if anyone ever feels this satisfied doing customer service. That is just like the best way to feel really bad about yourself or life in general. But everything else, the planning, the logistics, like it's stressful and it's hard, but I feel really rewarded doing it. It's not going to feel like that for everyone. The modeling is like a nice little sweet treat, like on top of it. Having good photos, nice sweet treat on top of it. But like traveling, like not as exciting half the time as you would think it is. You're traveling for work. You're not traveling for vacation, which are very different. Sorry. My goodness. But yeah, other than that, I would say the like tiny minority of models that I've helped, I've been burnt by. I've had this happen to me personally. I'm gonna say like 2.5 times because like I got two different models who I warned them about going to a very certain photographer and they did it anyway. One of them came back and was just like, yeah, you were right. I shouldn't have worked with this person. Like, and I just, what's the point of giving someone advice if they're just going to get themselves hurt anyway? But the worst one is, and I've had this happen with like two different models, giving them advice on people that maybe they shouldn't work with, red flags, things to watch out for. They did it anyway. They came back and told me that, like, it's just a misunderstanding. I'm too sensitive, that like they talked to the photographer about the situation and got it cleared up. Like, I understand that there are miscommunications in photography and modeling, but I don't decide not to work with people lightly. I'm very tolerant as far as like most models go, and newer models aren't as aware of all the ways people will try to manipulate them and try to hurt them, and you will get hurt and you will get manipulated when you start and do this job. You will find that you've crossed your boundaries already, and you will have to learn how to backpedal and hold hard onto those boundaries, how to like constantly fight for yourself, how to constantly be your own advocate. I would say like this job will make you so strong, and you will realize that you are taken advantage of a lot, or people are trying to. And new models aren't always ready for that. I definitely wasn't. And I have no idea why I kept going. Probably because it didn't feel particularly new to me. I feel like being taken advantage of is just living in this world. It's just a different kind of thing altogether. So that's my piece, that's my stance. I still want to make a video on how to get into modeling and some tips and tricks and some ideas, just so I can tell people who really do want to try and venture into the path. I already have my spiel out there instead of repeating myself. But I thought I'd make this video first in order to kind of explain why you aren't seeing a lot of people actually making it, and why you see a lot more scams out there than you see like people actually giving real good tips, advice, tricks, etc. on how to get into modeling and how to get paid for this. It's because you're going to make a lot more money telling people how to pose better, how to like get better images, etc., etc., and you're going to make them a lot happier than telling them that they have to go spend the next like 40 hours next week making emails. All right, well, thanks so much. I really hope that this was helpful or entertaining, interesting at all, mostly helpful. Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, and hopefully I'll make another video in the next something amount of weeks. See how it goes.